Hey guys, this is Mel, and I'm back to talk about Legacies, episode 311, titled You Can't Run From Who You Are, which premiered Thursday, May 6, 2021 on the CW, also my birthday, so huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the episode already, please go do so first, and then come back and see what I have to say about the episode. My other video reminders are up on screen, so take a moment to remind yourselves of those. I am recording on May 7th, just because I would have recorded sooner, but I was waiting for so long for something to be posted about what the creature name was, because I couldn't remember it, and I didn't want to talk about it without having it known to me. And when I woke up, the name was finally published in one of the transcripts. So I'm recording now. I haven't seen any other reaction videos like I would usually do when I wake up the next day. I just want to talk about it first. So before we get into it, huge YouTube shoutouts to In the Games 123 and Golden Angel 15 for your comments on my 310 video a few weeks ago. And just a huge thank you to everybody who also watched those videos. It just means a lot that you guys are taking a bit of time out of your day just to hear what I have to say. And just engaging in the comments. I really appreciate it. Like I always said before, being able to talk to somebody else about a show that you have in common and talk about it without having to explain what's happening to someone, it does do a lot. So thank you so much. So I'm going to try to keep this short. No timer though, but I'm going to try to keep in mind the time. But let's start with what happened in this episode. So episode quote, "You can't run from who you are." Website's still not saying that part, but I think it was Dark Josie who said it to Josie. The only other scenario I could think of that it would apply to would be Finch and Lizzy, maybe. But I'm pretty sure it's Josie and Dark Josie where this quote came up. Hopefully by the time I edit it, it'd be properly up on screen. Timeline-wise, though, I think it's shortly after events of 310. It's definitely long enough for the Super Squad to try 9 other different methods to spark Cleo's power as a muse. Because when we start off, their initial episode is with them failing at method number 9 of meditation. And then method 10 was the mind melt idea. So there's that. Episode reminder. There's actually a few things. When I say you can't run from who you are, I guess you could easily say the whole Dark Josie revisit, because that is what the promo kindly heavily focused on. So I'll leave it at that, just because that's probably what you're going to get when you type in Legacies 311, is that promo, and you're going to see Dark Josie, even though she was very minor. But the feature creature, what I was waiting in order to do this video is that the creature is a Burbalang. And in the prison world is where he is, but since he can interact with the astral plane, he became a bit of a problem when they took a trip to the prison world. And Burbalang has an infectious bite that turns its victims into a Burbalang, and within an hour. So we had to deal with that. And that is getting us to the storylines of the episode. So the breakdown. We got 3 different storylines I picked up on. First one, Prison World Mishap, which deals with the Burbalang. Second one is the Triad failure. Triad the company, not Triad as in, or I guess that's different. Hope's the Tribrid. So Triad's the company, but that's the failure. And the third one is Forgotten Memories. So with the first storyline, we have Hope and Landon astral project to the prison world to try to negotiate with the necromancer, because they want to sever his ties to the prison world in hopes that the prison world will collapse. Kind of like what happened with Kai Parker in his prison world. But before they can get to the necromancer, before he can wake up to talk to them, Hope gets bitten by the Burbalang, who could interact with their astral forms. And now her physical body at the school is transforming into a Burbalang. Because of this, before this transformation happens, Hope sends Landon back to reality. And when he sees that her bite is actually on her physical body and not just her astral body, he brings in the help of Josie and Wade to help him figure out what the creature is and what's happening to Hope. Before he brings them in, Josie is at the school specifically because she was there to find Lizzy to talk about relationship stuff. But since Lizzy wasn't there, she ran into Wade, who stayed behind at the school to be like a protector, and he was actually in like a medieval knight suit. But he had the projection crystal, or the prism, which Josie used to talk to somebody so that she could talk to somebody about her relationship. Turns out that's how Dark Josie comes out, and the reason why Dark Josie comes out because she is Josie's subconscious and what she's trying to suppress. So she gets told that she can have a happy life, but she can't have a happy human life. There's a very distinction, and so there's a huge battle of like you can't keep running away from magic, from dark magic. It's a part of you, kind of a thing. And before, with all that, that's when they get Josie and Wade get brought into Landon's issue with Hope turning into a Beverlang. So there's that. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But the second storyline deals with Triad, where we get Alaric, Cleo, and Caleb going to the Triad facility, which got ransacked, except for the secret room that holds all of its supernatural artifact files. In it, Alaric finds, I think, a sketch of the Dreambox artifact before it got destroyed by security measures. I think it was the electrical fire system, protection system. But he finds out that the project name was called Project Pandora. While on this mission, Caleb tries and fails to land a date with Cleo until he is actually truthful to her and she agrees to go on a dinner date with him. Hang on. Sorry, phone call. I usually call late at late when everyone else is asleep. So, anyways. Yeah. Date. Third storyline, Forgotten Memories. This deals with Lizzy and MG helping Finch, or trying to get down to the mystery of how Finch triggered her werewolf curse, because first off, Finch believes she was the only werewolf. She claims she didn't kill anybody, but Lizzy states that is kind of one of the requirements to become a werewolf. So, Finch gives consent to allow MG and Lizzy to enter in her mind to figure out how she became a werewolf. And it brings her to the day that she first turned as a child, where she pretty much helped her grandfather overdose. And he kind of tricked her into doing it because he wanted her to become strong. And he believed that the curse was actually a blessing, and he wanted her to be strong so she could take care of herself by being a werewolf. And so he allowed her to die. If anything, it's kind of similar to what Liv allowed Tyler to do back at the end of season 6 of the Vampire Diaries. At that point, he wasn't a werewolf anymore, and she was already dying due to her coven dying. But he was also dying too because of like a car accident, I think, that had happened, or a huge thing had happened. And she pretty much forced him to kill her so that he could trigger his werewolf curse so he could heal with supernatural healing. So it was kind of a similar situation like that when it came to Finch, but Finch, a teenage Finch, forgot about that last moment she had with her grandfather. So now that's put a huge rift between her and Lizzy, especially after finding out that Lizzy is Josie's twin sister. So we got a few things there. But okay, and the last scene of the episode is Wade telling Hope about his suspicions about Landon not being Landon, or that something is not right with Landon. And I say it's about time, and we'll talk about that later. Characters, though. Agent Clark actually appears in the opening scene of the episode in this old archivy footage type of thing of where whatever organization he's part of, because I don't think he's part of the Triad in this, is trying and failing to open the dream box. And they tried using explosives. That failed. So now they're trying to go to acidic properties. At the end of the footage archive, before the title card came up, there was this symbol that showed up. But I don't know if that's the Triad symbol or if it's a symbol of something else entirely. So that's something there. Finch, as I mentioned before, found out that she triggered her curse as a child when she helped her grandfather overdose. Because he wanted to make her stronger, but she didn't understand what was happening. She just knew that her grandfather told her to give her his pills. She gave him the pills and stuff like that. And she always believed that she was the only werewolf. She didn't know how she became one. She didn't know why she was one. So that's kind of it there. She also revealed to Lizzy that she really did like Josie. So it kind of seems like there's still a divide in that area as well. But speaking of Josie, in this episode, she does take her magic back. In order to save Hope from becoming a Berbalang, they needed an enchanted weapon. They had the weapon on the school, but since fairy magic was not going to do it with Wade, Josie was technically the only witch on the premises. So she she decided that it was time to take her magic back so she could enchant the weapon so that Hope could be cured. So that's something there. MG. We see MG giving advice to Lizzy to tell Josie the truth about Finch. And then we also see MG making the decision to tell Alark about Ethan because Lizzy also found out that Ethan kept his memories. So that's something that also transpired between them. Here's something else, though. Jed was only present during the Muse brainstorming session in the gym. He wasn't placed on any of the other missions, and he wasn't shown being one of the people that stayed behind at school. Like Wade. Like, he wasn't hanging out with Wade while everybody else was either at Triad or doing the astral projection. So it's like, it felt kind of weird that, like, we still got Jed in that one scene, but yet you don't explain, well, what is he supposed to do while everybody else is doing everything else? Like, you know what I mean? So, there's that. Tidbit-wise, we do find out from Wade that the students at the school, so I guess the other 20-plus students, were given a 3-day weekend. So, it's either a Monday or a Friday for them since Ethan still had to go to school. We also have Ethan answering a police call for a situation in a bar, and he goes on his own, but he gets found by MG at their hideout being very severely beaten up. So we'll talk about that later. We do have Lizzy also offering Finch to have her memory blocked about her grandfather's death, kind of like having her forget what happened that day. I don't know if Finch agreed to having the memory block, or if she said no because she had to remember what her grandfather said. But I think it's that way because if she still remembers what her grandfather said, that's going to put a further divide between her and Josie. So I'm not completely certain about that, but I think that's kind of where it was leading towards. Another thing is that Alark was on the phone with Dorian about his findings at Triad about Project Pandora, but we don't see or hear Dorian. So that's something. And then Hope does mention Kai Parker in this at the earlier starts of the episode. But yeah, what was the most shocking moment in the episode? I think the fact that Hope was able to turn into a Burbalang. Even though it was briefly, and it was terrifying what she looked like. I mean, that was like great, like special effects and stuff like that. Or practical effects, I should say. Or special effects makeup, I should say. Still very, like, it was very creepy though, too. But I'm still kind of shocked that, like, as a tribrid, she could still turn into a creature. Like, you know, like, I would have assumed, like, supernatural beings had immunity to becoming other supernatural beings, but I guess that's not the case here. So yeah, I'm also kind of shocked, though, that Burbalang Hope doesn't really remember, or Hope doesn't remember her time as a Burbalang, or she doesn't recall what she did as a Burbalang. I guess that's the impression I got, that she didn't, so we'll have to see about that. Top 3 favorite moments. Okay, first off, I love that Wade was already having his suspicions about Landon, and he's sharing them with Hope. Like, that's, like, about time, and maybe that kind of explains why we've had less scenes with Landon and Wade since he came back, because he was able to pick up on all these small things that people would have assumed is, like, okay, that's kind of, like, that's, like, nerdy, but then, like, Wade's like, no, but that's still Landon, and yet this Landon's not showing that kind of a thing. So I really love that I'll talk about it kind of a little bit later. But I love that Wade was noticing all these weird little things and he wasn't brushing it off. And he was, like, fully concerned because we had, like, the main thing I really loved was that when Wade, Josie, and Landon are all deciding, like, if they're going to, like, stabbing Hope with the weapon, or Burbalang Hope with the weapon in her heart was going to cure her. But then Wade was, like, he was really need to take on the responsibility, but he was definitely explaining how, like, if they're wrong, they killed Hope kind of a thing. Because they don't know what her vampire part of her would do. They don't know if killing her would bring her back her life as a vampire. They don't know if killing her just killed her kind of a thing. So it's like there's a huge hesitation to it. But then for Landon, I really love that Wade stuck to the fact that, like, Landon didn't really hesitate to stab Hope in the heart. Burbalang Hope in the heart, because Wade even said to Hope that, like, Landon would never, ever hurt you. And that's like the truest thing possible. And the fact that this Landon was willing to stop, because I'm still thinking that this is not the real Landon. It's either going to be some type of Malivore, type of a something that did with Malivore, or like he's fully not the real Landon. Because I still say, because then also, if it's not actually Landon, I could definitely believe it's connected to Malivore, because if he was so willing to stab Hope in the heart, either yes, he cures her of becoming a Burbalang, or it actually kills Hope. And if it's someone connected to Malivore, that is what they would want, because Hope it's his biggest enemy, right? So I really love that Wade, like we saw in that scene, I even kept note of it. Josie looked like relieved when Hope became Hope again, but then Wade looked kind of like worried and like confused and like looking at Landon like, wait, what did you just do? Kind of a thing. Like, I can't believe you just did that. So I really love that Wade was putting all these little things together, and how like even when we found out that him and Landon had this 30-hour marathon of a D&D campaign, and everyone's thinking like, oh, that's lame. But then it's like, no, for Landon and Wade, that would be something huge. Like, you don't do that every day. So it's like, that's a hard thing to forget. And the fact that Landon did forget it, like, again, another reason why I think that he is not actually Landon, because he doesn't remember his time in the prison world. He doesn't remember about having the Hope's necklace. And he doesn't remember all these things like with Wade as well too. It's like, that's a huge thing. Those are things you just can't easily forget, because they don't happen often. So I really love that Wade didn't just keep it to himself. I love that he actually shared it with Hope completely, and it took all of his examples to really show to her that, like, plus the fact that her Burbalang Hope was gunning for Landon when a Burbalang is only attracted to like dead flesh for food. So it makes you wonder, either this Landon is Malivore, or maybe he's the necromancer somehow. I don't know, because that would make sense too, because then like the necromancer is dead flesh, right? Or he's already dead and somebody's just puppeting his meat suit, right? So it's like, I'm loving Wade putting the connections. Like, Wade, about time. It shouldn't take you doing it, but I'm glad it's also you too. So we'll get to that in a moment. Another favorite I did have is between MG and Lizzy, specifically when he is walking her home, and they were talking about like all the things that they uncovered today, and how he's telling, like, you're not a monster for what you did today. Well, everything you did was to protect the person that you love. And now he thinks anybody who is on that side of Lizzy is very lucky. And then how she tells him that whatever you decided will be the right choice. You always make the right choice, kind of thing. Like, they're full support for each other. It's just, I'm loving it. And just like, can they not be mad at each other? Like, I need that friendship again. Like, at minimum. Like, yes, love it if they got together too, but then at the same time, it's like, I need at least their friendship to be back on track. But yeah, they always have good scenes together. Another favorite I did have was Caleb's honesty with Cleo. We actually find a little bit more about Caleb, where he tells her the last time he was vulnerable with somebody, it pretty much led him to becoming a vampire. And it would make sense how a traumatic moment like that, if you connect it to being vulnerable, you are not going to want to be vulnerable anymore. So it was very interesting to learn that about Caleb, but it was really great to have him actually tell Cleo the truth about why he wanted to be on the mission with her, and it's because he wanted to protect her in case Malivore sent another creature after her. And I also really like that Cleo was honest with him about why she kept saying no, even though she was still interested in him. Because she was right. It's like, she didn't want to go out with the guy who kept trying to impress her with all these petty things, but she wanted someone who was truthful and who was honest with and just being themselves. And then the moment that he was himself with her, she agreed to go on a date with him. So like, I really like that she stuck to her guns, and she pretty much made him work on presenting himself the correct way, and that is as yourself. So I do appreciate that. And then a bonus favorite I had, which was just funny, was Landon's impression of the necromancer when Hope was trying to practice her pitch to the necromancer, and then Landon was playing the part of him. The impression was like pretty much spot on. If I didn't already have suspicions about Landon being somebody else, I would have thought that was I thought that was like just funny as hell how accurate he was. But then also, now that what's happened with the Berberlang Hope, I'm wondering if maybe Landon is the necromancer. And maybe that it just in disguise, and maybe that's why he never resurrected when they found his severed body parts in the prison world. Right? Like, that's what I'm thinking, maybe. Maybe it is the necromancer in disguise. If it is, I could be so grossed out because then she's been kissing the necromancer. It's like, ugh. But yeah, that's another theory right there. But we'll get into top 3 peeved moments now. I really don't like the fact that Ethan went after the police call on his own at the bar. I mean, like, I get Ethan wanting to be a superhero, but at the same time, it's like, you're still a human. And you're not really trained in any normal human ways to be a superhero. And yet you go off to try to deal with it yourself. I mean, like, if anything, this should also be a reason why it also makes it kind of like, oh, you don't, it's kind of a reason why you should compel his memories away. I kind of wish, like, if Ethan's going to go off on his own to do these things, a part of me kind of wishes that you just compel his memories where it's like, unless he's with MG, that's only when he remembers about the supernatural stuff. But then once he's away from MG, then like he doesn't remember any of it. Who did that before? Catherine did that in season 4 of the Vampire Diaries, in that one girl in episode 418, where if anybody asked who Catherine Pierce was, they wouldn't know who she was unless she was actually talking to Catherine Pierce. So that's why this one human that was compelled was able to answer Elena's questions about Catherine, because she still looked like Catherine. But when Rebecca asked her about Catherine, she didn't know who Catherine was. So it's stuff like that, or with what they had with Ethan's mom, with Sheriff Mack, unless Alaric activated his key phrase of like, I need your help, it's life or death, then she would remember everything, or she'd be more helpful. So stuff like that. If Ethan's not able to act accordingly, I feel like if it might lead to that way if they don't just compel it all away from him. Because I don't think they will, but I feel like they have to do something if he's going to continuously put himself in harm's way when he doesn't really have the skills to defend himself, you know? I don't know. It really bugged me when it showed him going off against that police report. And then it didn't really surprise me when MG found him completely beaten to a pulp. But it was just like, really, buddy? Like, really? Like, how stupid are you? And it's like, Ethan, like, don't. So that was a peeve. And then another peeve, I kind of touched upon it when I was talking about my favorites, but it still kind of peeves me that it took Wade one day in Landon's presence to figure out that there was something wrong. And yet Hope, who is his girlfriend, it didn't figure anything. Or anybody else who's been in Landon's presence a lot longer than Wade wasn't able to figure out that something was wrong with Landon. But it took one episode and a few instances that Wade had with Landon to figure out, yeah, there's something wrong with him, kind of a thing. Like, it kind of, like, I love it for Wade having that moment of, like, being the one to discover it, but then at the same time, I'm kind of frustrated that, like, it took Wade one encounter to figure out that something was wrong, as opposed to every other friendship figuring that. And now that I think about it, that kind of reminds me of season 5 of the Vampire Diaries, when Catherine jumped into Elena's body, and yet none of her friends realized that it was Catherine and not Elena until, like, the one person who actually was in, like, an actual direct confrontation with her. Like, was it Stefan? I don't know. It's been a while since I've seen that episode. But, like, it kind of gave me that vibe. So it was kind of like, yes, it would kind of explain why you wouldn't have Landon in solo scenes with Wade, because he would figure it out. But at the same time, it's like, why wouldn't you? Like, make a point of, like, Wade saying, like, hey, I haven't seen you around a bunch. Like, you missed a bunch of our D&D game nights, kind of a thing. And Landon's like, oh, I was just trying to adjust or something like that. So it was kind of weird. And it's a little bit peevish there for me. But let's move on to random questions very quickly. First, did MG say the barn that they were using as their superhero hideout was what belonged to the relatives of, or the people he was bunking with at the moment? Because isn't he staying with Damon and Elena? Because that's where Josie is staying. And if that's the case, does that mean this barn he's using belongs to their family? I guess the Salvatore Gilbert family. I don't know what to call them. I mean, technically they're the Salvatores, but every time I say Salvatore property, I associate that with the boarding house. So it's like, I'm thinking it's the Gilbert property, like the original Gilbert property, even though they're technically Salvatore. I don't know. So that's a question there. Second question. What set off the electrical fire that destroyed the drawing of the artifact dream box? Like, what set that alarm off for it to turn into dust the way that it did? Because I would have thought, like, Alark would have found it very suspicious that suddenly the alarm went off without them doing anything to trigger it. I mean, did they do anything to trigger it? I didn't think they did. So that's a question there. Another question. Will Finch confront Josie about being a witch, or will she stay clear of her? Like, I want there to be... Like, I really want Finch to go to the Salvatore school. I really want her and Josie to actually have a full-on conversation. Because I think, since they're both part of the supernatural world, I feel like they could be good together. Because that was the huge issue between them, is that they both thought that they were from the human, the other was from the human world. So it would have made it a little bit difficult to have a relationship with that balance, because you'd always be putting the other in danger. But if you're both part of the same world, the other one's always going to be in danger, whether they're in the relationship or not. So it's like, why not just be in the relationship, kind of a thing. So I'm wondering how things are going to happen here. If Finch is just going to stay clear of Josie because of what Lizzy did, or because of what she found out further with being a werewolf, or like, how's Josie going to handle it when she finds out that Lizzy lied to her? Like, what is going to happen there? Also, another question I had was, like, where is Gabby? Like, I know that Wade said that the students were given a 3-day weekend, and that's why no one was pretty much at the school, and he decided to stay behind. But then we only saw Gabby in that one episode when they were recruiting students, and she's supposed to be Wade's friend, and they're supposed to have D&D in common with each other. So I'm kind of confused as to why, when Wade is pretty much dressed up and ready to play, and the D&D board is out, and he's ready to play with Landon and Hope, and yet Gabby is not there. It's like you put this huge emphasis on why Gabby would stay at the school is because of her friendship with Wade and this commonality between them, and yet I haven't seen her at all since. So, like, where is she? I mean, I don't really care for her, but then at the same time, like, she's the one that helped them gain the numbers they needed to keep the school open, you know? So, there's that. But let's move on to predictions. So, based off the promo, I forgot to write it down. Okay, based off the promo, we see Hope's suspicions for Landon growing. We see him training with Jed with impossible strength when he shouldn't, now that he doesn't have the Phoenix powers anymore. And she actually confronts him, saying, like, you're not Landon. So, that's gonna get spicy! But the synopsis for the episode reads, Hope's suspicion is piqued after Wade shares some startling news with her. To uncover the secrets of a mysterious artifact, Alaric must work with an enemy from his past. After Ethan finds himself in harm's way, MG is forced to make a difficult decision. Landon, Josie, and Jed are also set to appear. Okay, first off, two parts of that synopsis were kind of already touched upon in this episode. So unless they're going to, like, further go into it in the next episode, I'm kind of confused. An enemy from Alaric's past. Either that's going to be Agent Clark, or I'm hoping it's actually an enemy from, like, his times on, like, the Vampire Diaries. Then that would be so cool to see a familiar face in that way. But I'm wondering who that would be, though. I don't know. So it'd be very interesting to see what happens. I definitely want to see this mystery of Landon being solved, because as I said before, it's not Landon, it's somebody else. Either it's Malivore pretending to be Landon, either it was Agent Clark, or it was his mother. No, wait, that's not Landon. That's the person I'm thinking is the Prison World Warrior, the masked one, which we actually didn't see in this episode. I'm thinking that person is the real Landon, or it's Agent Clark, or it's Landon's mother. But I think the Landon trying right now, the suspicious Landon, it's either Malivore pretending to be Landon, or it could be the Necromancer pretending to be Landon. But I definitely don't think it's the real Landon. I think the real Landon is the one in the prison, as the Prison World Warrior, which we haven't seen, and I'm wondering why we didn't see them in this episode. Yeah, but the last time we did see them, they did take a hair of Hope and Landon, so I don't know. We'll have to wait and see about that, though. But what did you guys think of this episode? What did you guys like about it? What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments down below. Love to hear your own thoughts, theories, and opinions about all that good stuff. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos if you haven't done so already. Click the notification bell as well to be notified of when I post the next video, because I know I am not consistent on whether I post Fridays or Saturdays or any other days in between, especially when it comes to Legacies. I mean, I try to do my best with Legacies postings, but sometimes internet, sometimes delayed information I need before I do the video, you know. So yeah, notification bell usually helps. Also, if you want, check out my Tumblr page. Link for that is down below. I reblog promos, web clips, quotes, gifs, synopses, news, all the good stuff, all found in one place. Go check that out. I'm a little behind, but I should actually probably get back to that. But everything you can check out there. WordPress account, link for that is down below. Anything I post online is connected to WordPress. A little more organized, a little more detailed, but still a work in progress once again. Otherwise, guys, I'm going to leave it there. But thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. I hope you come back next week to see what I have to say about the episode. I'm hoping we get actual answers about what's happening with Landon, or fake Landon, as we say. But until then, guys, this is Mel. Wish you all a great day, great week, wherever you are. Take care and be safe. Bye for now.